Okay. I knew there had to be a technical glitch. My husband, Keith, is yelling from the other room, can't hear you. Didn't realize I was muted. Did make sure I could share my screen. I knew there had to be a technical glitch. Okay. Can you hear me now? Everybody hear me now? All right. Let's make sure. I've got my other screen muted. It's so funny. There's always going to be a technical glitch, I think, with me. I think that's going to be my hallmark, that there has to be some technical glitch. So let's start this over. I did make sure I could share my screen, so we'll have that down tonight. But I know most of you are probably not expecting to see me again. Tyler is traveling. He is fine. He is okay. Just doing some traveling. And so he asked me late this afternoon if I could jump on and cover for him. And of course, I said I would be glad to. And, that gives him a good rest for tomorrow night so he can be ready and roaring to go for our Faith Friday that hopefully you're going to join us for. And tonight, we're going to just talk about a few things. I'm going to do a pretty good recap of the Crumbley trial today. I didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare. So we're going to listen to a lot of the trial and discuss a lot of the trial together. So kind of what I want to do tonight is do this a little bit differently than we did last night, but same in some ways. I want to kind of break it into segments. So in the first segment, we're going to talk about did they know what was really going on with Ethan? Should they have been reasonably able to predict what would happen? And you'll understand why I'm saying those words and why I'm breaking it up that way as we kind of go through what was said in the trial, because that was one of the key points. Did they know? Did they know what was going on with him, or did they not? And should they have known what he was going to do? And so that was one of the key points that was brought out in the trial. And then should they be charged, which we now know they will be. They're going to be charged. They're going to have a trial. They're going to have a jury trial. But will they be convicted? And there's some mixed opinions about that, whether they will be convicted and whether they should be, and whether that's a good thing or whether that's a bad thing. So we're going to start off the night by kind of listening, well, not kind of listening, by listening to the prosecution and what she has to say after the judge said there will be a trial. So I'm going to share my screen, and if the share screen fairies are with me tonight, this is going to work. And so we're going to, there it is. Yay, I didn't have to go out and come back in. We're going to listen to her and her words say kind of, how she feels about what the judge said.
You tell me during his testimony you're going to give the truth under the penalty of perjury.
No, it's not celebratory. 4 children died. So I just spoke with the families, and it's still sad. It's tragic and sad. And I'm happy and grateful that the judge did the right thing, and she knows the law, and so I'm absolutely grateful. But again, it's just tragic, and it didn't have to happen. So
that's a lot going on with this case. At some point, will you look at charges against the school counselor?
I do not see a criminal case against any school employee, and there's a civil case filed, and I'm sure there'll be depositions and motions, and the lawsuit will proceed. But this really has nothing to do with my case. We focus on the criminal prosecution.
Was there anything the defense brought to your attention today that worried you, raised an eyebrow, anything?
No. I think we did we worked really hard. We made sure we were prepared. We knew, despite what a lot of others suggest, that the law was on our side, that it was absolutely criminal negligence, and we were confident in that. So I'm grateful that the judge knows the law, and the judge did the right thing. And again, I hope that if nothing else, because we can't bring these 4 kids back, that maybe people will think twice about how they handle a weapon and use reasonable common sense precautions. I mean, just the smallest of things could have prevented these 4 deaths. So
you talked during the hearing about
Ethan not being on his parents' health insurance and not being taken to the doctor. What can you tell us about that, and what does that say about access to mental health in our community?
Well, look, we have a mental health issue, but that wasn't the issue in this case. He wasn't taken to the doctor. He asked for help. I mean, you all heard the testimony over and over again, and they were just indifferent. So the fact that they had medical insurance available and didn't use it is just one more piece of this complete disregard. You know, they didn't care. They didn't care.
What was that conversation with the parents like afterwards?
You know, again, this isn't something to celebrate because they had to sit and listen to this, you know, those awful details. And I know they thought the same thing we have thought since the beginning, which is it could have so easily been prevented. These cases don't happen that often because these facts don't happen that often. They are egregious. There was a complete lack of care at all. And, you know, I still, no matter what I do as a prosecutor or what my team does behind me, Marquise obviously was my co-counsel, and I have a whole team of people, and our office is very invested in it, but we can't bring Hannah and Tate and Justin and Madison back. We can't do that. But we're going to do everything we can to make sure and hope that this doesn't happen again.
All right. Okay. So, you know, there's just so much with this case, and I think what
You sound sorry,
Let's stop
testimony
that.
going to give the truth under the kind of
there's so much going on with this case, and there's so much. I did end up getting to listen to at 1.5 times speed to both of the hearings or both parts of the hearing today, and there's so much with this case. There are so many different aspects to it, and today I was listening to both of the attorneys argue their points, and both of them had some really good points. There was a lot of really good information put forth. And so I think I do see why it went to trial, why it's going to trial. But I do think there is going to be some tricky things about it. And we're going to talk about those in just a second. And I did want to mention, I've seen a few people mention Ukraine. And absolutely, 100%, we are all praying for Ukraine and what is going on there. But I don't know, and maybe near the end, we'll do a prayer. We'll have one of our fellow fam members come in and say a prayer and make sure that we specifically mention Ukraine. I don't know that this particular channel, is the place to talk about it because Tyler wants to stay so far away from politics. He might talk about it tomorrow night during Faith Friday, and I don't think there's at all anything wrong with us saying a prayer for Ukraine and what is going on there at the end of the stream. But since it's not my channel, I don't want to be the one to have that discussion on his channel since he has said that he wants to stay away from politics. So know that I'm not avoiding the subject. I'm not ignoring the subject. I know it's important. It's weighing heavily on, I'm sure, all of our hearts and minds. But I don't want to shift that direction on his channel without discussing with him first. But I do not think there's anything wrong with us saying that our hearts are going out to Ukraine and us, remembering all those in Ukraine that are dealing with this in our prayer, our closing prayer at the end of the evening. So I hope that's okay. That's just what I feel based on the fact that it's not my channel. And he has said that we want to try and keep the channel away from politics. So if he wants to discuss it, I want that to be his choice and not mine. So we're going to go ahead and dive into what was covered in this case today. I don't know if any of you had a chance. It was a lot. I know I did actually see a couple of people in chat saying that they watched the whole case and watched, everything that was unfolding. But there was a lot. In fact, I'm going to bring my notes over here where I can see them because I did take notes because there was so much. But again, that first question, did they know what was going on with Ethan? Because that's what they're being charged with. They're being charged with involuntary manslaughter. So in other words, the judge is saying, and she talks about this at the end, and we're going to play that in just a minute, but she basically says that they were so negligent that their negligence resulted in the death of these 4 individuals. And when you look, or children, I shouldn't say individuals, these 4 children. And when you look at, some of the evidence that was put forth, it does seem that way. But there is, always that other side. And it's really a conflict for me in some ways, because as I guess there's three hats I put on. I put on, the hat of a parent who, if my child was one of the ones that had been killed, I would be angry and I would want justice and honestly probably some degree of, retribution, and really want to see them, if not held accountable, but maybe punished is not too hard of a word, for what their son did. Then there's the mom in me that says, sometimes children do things that are not the fault of the parent, and they do have a lot of blame. Don't get me wrong. But when you hear some of the things that happened, that transpired as this case is going on, you start to have questions. And, there's that whole element of court cases and being found guilty is reasonable doubt, right? Is there reasonable doubt? So in other words, did they really know? Did they really know what he was capable of? Did they really think it would get that bad? And if there's any doubt, then the law says we don't convict. So that's where some of the kind of stickiness comes in. And then, there's that element of precedent. And I saw some people in chat mentioning precedent. And just in case, I realize probably almost everybody knows what precedent is, but just in case, let's talk about what precedent is. So precedent, just really briefly, means that whatever we decide as a court, as a legal system in a case, can then be applied to other cases, even if all the details aren't exactly the same. So, for example, if this sets the precedent, and again, we're going to talk about this more in a minute, but if this sets the precedent that parents can be held responsible for their children's actions, where does that stop? Because once the precedent is set, then that means, if you buy your kid a phone, for example, and your kid does something that is considered illegal on that phone, and let's go at, and this is one of the examples that they used in court at a really not minor level, but at a lower level than what happened here. For example, if kids are swapping inappropriate pictures back and forth, that's against the law. If we set this precedent through this case and they're found guilty, that does open the door in the future for parents to be held responsible for things that their kids do on their phone. So keep in mind, I'm not saying necessarily that I know the answers. I've been kind of torn back and forth through this entire hearing today going, oh, well, that's a good point. That's a good point. Oh, well, that's a good point. So I'm not saying I know the answers, but these are just things to think about that, once we set this precedent, we've got to be willing to say, okay, if a kid it takes a car that is owned by a parent and kills someone, then the parent too can be charged. It sounds like it's a stretch and it sounds like it's different, but in the eyes of the law, it's really not, because involuntary manslaughter is involuntary manslaughter. And one of the interesting things you'll hear when the judge starts talking about the case at the end and why she decided to go ahead and move forward with the case and for them to have a jury trial, she keeps mentioning precedent that exists when a parent, for example, when a child gets a hold of a firearm because they were unsupervised and an accident happens and someone is killed. And there have been, I think it was literally 2 or 3 cases where the parent's been held responsible, but she keeps using the term child. And I think what we could find is that could end up lessening the charges on Ethan if his parents are found to be negligent to such an extent that they are charged with involuntary manslaughter for the 4 murders that he committed. Then the only precedent that exists is for negligent homicide, not paying attention to a child. Well, does that mean that he will be charged as a child, or could be charged as a child, or have the charges reduced and get out sooner? And I think based on everything we've seen that he had some pretty significant issues. So rather than sit here and listen to me talk the entire time, I'm going to play a few clips, and then I would love for some of you to call in and talk about how you feel about that first question, which is the first question again was, did they know what was really going on with Ethan? And should they reasonably have been able to predict what would happen? So our first clip right here is.
Now, the last time we were in court, the prosecution ended by asking you about some of the conversations.
I don't think it's showing. Let me close the first one.
That Ethan and Brady would have.
Let me back that up a little bit.
Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Just so record, I have 6 pages for exhibit.
Okay, give me just 1 second. Let me see if I can find the right spot I want to get to here. All right, and share my screen again. All right, here we go.
Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Just so record, I have 6 pages for exhibit 32, is that what you guys want?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so on the first page, we can see that video was sent to Ethan's friend.
Correct.
And there's discussion about inviting his friend to the gun range.
Correct.
And
And what
you can
she's
see that
talking about
Ethan
right
sends
here
another video to his
is
friend.
whether or not
Correct.
his parents
And the
knew what
friend
was
is saying
going on in
things
his
like,
mind about
"Nice,
his
now
mental
pull the
issues.
trigger, JK, JK, JK. What is your understanding of what JK, JK, JK means?
Just kidding.
So just kidding, just kidding, just kidding. And those are all things the friend says to Ethan. Nice, now pull the trigger, JK, 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 correct?
Correct, yes, ma'am.
And Ethan responds about how his dad left the gun out, but he knows gun safety, so it's no problem, correct?
Correct.
And then he says, now it's time to shoot up the school, and in capital letters, JK, 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 correct?
Correct.
So this conversation existed between Ethan and his friend.
Correct.
But there is not any kind of conversation like this between Ethan and his mother
Correct.
or Ethan and his father.
Correct.
Now, the last time we were in court, the prosecution ended by asking you about some of the conversations that Ethan and Brady would have. And your testimony was that they talked about disturbing things, including the bird head, hurting another girl at school, and mentioned some of the other topics between Ethan and Brady. Do you recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
And Ethan and Brady's text messages, if I told you that it's this entire pile is the communications between Ethan and Brady, would that surprise you?
I believe they're about 25,000, so it looks about right.
25,000 messages, about 5,000 pieces of paper when you print
Kind
it
of
out.
amazing to see how many texts
And you would
he
agree
was
with me
sending to
that
just this one friend.
while there was conversations about the bird head and hurting another student, Ethan and Brady talked about way, way, way more topics than just those types of things, correct?
Correct.
They talk about playing different video games, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
They talk about how much they eat versus how big their stool is when they go to the bathroom.
I don't recall that exact one right now, but
They talk about silly boy things.
yes, ma'am.
They talk about other students.
Yes, ma'am.
They talk about homework.
Correct.
What you've pulled out to share with this court, it's fair to say it's a very small section compared to the grand scheme of what Ethan and his friends talk about.
Correct.
Okay. And again, you pulled out what you believe is the most important information for this courtroom.
Yes, ma'am.
And these are between Ethan and Brady. You don't have any, it doesn't appear that Jennifer or James are grouped into any of these messages, correct?
Correct.
It appears these messages are strictly between those two boys. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So I'm going to stop this and I'm going to go to our next spot real quick. But just so you know, let me see. Just so you know, what she's doing right here is she's kind of going through everything, because originally the contention was that Jennifer and James should have known what was going on in Ethan's mind. And so what she is explaining is that all of this communication that the prosecution has come up with to kind of set the stage about Ethan's state of mind was between him and a friend. And it's that big, huge stack of papers that you see right there. And that it's the friend that he's telling he's hearing voices to. It's the friend he's saying, I need help to. He did say to the friend, you know, I need help and they won't get me help. But he doesn't necessarily say they is James and Jennifer. So that's the point that she's making, is that, yes, there was all this information out there, you know, to be found about Ethan and the things he was going through. But this information wasn't necessarily making it to James and Jennifer. So that's the point she's making here. And she's kind of driving home through this witness. And so I'm going to forward a little bit more to another point. And the point here that she makes that I think is really kind of interesting is, well, actually, I'll just let you listen to it and see if you catch what I catch right here.
You're not aware of a time that the person who purchased those phones in their name would be responsible for what the other people that they gave the phones to did on those phones?
I would have to say depend on who the people are they gave the phone to. If it's a juvenile, I would say yes.
You're not aware of a time where the owner has been held responsible for what the juvenile did on the phone. Is that fair?
Fair, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So I don't know if you caught that. Anybody, you know, it's kind of like last night where I was asking questions and I was expecting somebody to answer me. For those of you that don't know, I teach online sometimes. So a lot of times I'll ask a question. I'm used to people being able to pop back in because it's Zoom or Teams. So last night I was asking questions. I was like, wait, I'm expecting an answer. Nobody's going to answer me. But I don't know if you caught right there what he said. She said, this is the defense attorney that you're listening to right now. She said, has there ever been a time, and she kind of used that example that I just gave you, where a parent bought a phone and a juvenile did something with that phone and the parent was held responsible? And she said, yes. And he said, yes. He said a juvenile. And so that's kind of the point that she's drilling in here. So you can probably see they're setting it up, in my opinion, so that it can't be both ways. Either Ethan is an adult and is going to be tried as an adult, in which case the negligence, you know, juvenile negligence is probably not going to stand, or the juvenile negligence is going to stand and the charges could be reduced to a juvenile. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but these are just the things that are going through my mind when I was listening to her, and the case she was making is that juvenile word, child, kept coming up a lot, to the point where it stuck out to me. I was like, there's a reason that she keeps saying juvenile, child, and really drilling into that, like re-asking those questions, juvenile, child. So I think we're going to see that come out to play, and you'll see in some of the other clips. And again, I have about 3 more clips I want to play. And then I would love for some of you to call in. I really like that when we have multiple voices and multiple perspectives, because I'm definitely not the only one. And sometimes my perspective feels scattered to me, because as I was watching this trial, again, like I said, I kept going, good point. And so, you know, I don't know that I've made a decision, but I did think that I had made a decision. But when you start listening to some of these points that we're going to be listening to, a few more questions pop in, and I'll explain my thoughts on why I had questions at different, you know, points along the way, but I would definitely want to hear other perspectives. So I'm going to go back over to the video, and I'm going to go to my next clip. So if you'll give me just a second, I'm going to kind of slide this all the way over here to 138. We'll just let it start right here.
At this point from that, but I would say that
let me tell you who this is. So this is this man. Let me put myself back on the screen for a second so I can look at you. This man has got to be living a nightmare. This is the, for lack of a better definition, guidance counselor, but this man used to be a pastor. This man is the one that anytime there is a problem with a student and it appears to be mental health in nature. So he's a little bit more than a guidance counselor, but he deals with when there appears to be issues with students, like psychological issues and problems with students. And you can just tell by his countenance through the entire trial, the entire time he's on the stand, that he is tormented by what happened, because there's a lot of red flags he missed. And that becomes one of the points, is that, you know, he did not think that this was going to happen. He thought that there was a possibility that Ethan was a danger to himself, but he really thought that was the only possibility. And so that's why he sent Ethan back to class when Jennifer and James couldn't take him. And that point gets explained in just a minute. And I'll go ahead and give you a little preview of that, because I hate when people do that to me. But he makes the point very strongly that he felt that Ethan should not be left alone, because his fear was that Ethan was going to do something to himself. And so that was kind of his big concern, was that Ethan was going to do something to himself, not necessarily that Ethan was going to do something at the school. So he didn't think Ethan should be alone. So when James and Jennifer had to go back to work that day, he said, I want you to make sure he's seen in the next 48 hours. And the point that gets kind of drilled in here is that he was saying, I don't think Ethan should be alone. If James and Jennifer would have taken him from school, he would have had to have been home alone while they were working. So the agreement was that he would go back to class and they would get him seen in the next 48 hours. But again, the concern of this counselor was not that Ethan was going to do something harmful at school, but that he was possibly a risk to himself. So that's where this next line of questioning goes, just so you kind of understand where we're hopping into right here.
And with more regularity, we only had 2 days we were virtual. They were the 2 days before Thanksgiving, but student attendance was still low in general. We still had students missing school at a higher rate than we had previously seen.
Mr. Hopkins, do you know an individual by the name of Ethan Crumbley?
Yes.
And when did you first meet him?
He became on my caseload in the fall of 2020. The only memory I have of meeting him during his freshman year would have been when we did scheduling, and I do not remember that meeting specifically because we did them via Zoom. So I had approximately 3 grades worth of Zoom meetings with students in a 3-week period.
So you meet with all 400 students to schedule every
Aside
year?
from seniors, yes.
Okay. When was the next time after freshman year that you had any interaction with the student?
The only interaction I had previous to November 29th was I had received an email from a teacher that he seemed sad.
Which teacher was that?
Diana McConnell, his Spanish teacher.
And do you remember approximately what?
It would have been early November. And I had just what I would call a check-in. I waited for him outside of the classroom and said, hey, I heard you might be having a rough time. I'm here for you if you need to talk.
And what did he say?
He just looked at me and said, okay, and did not follow up with anything.
When was the next time you had any interaction with him?
The morning of November 29th.
And can you tell the court what that was?
There was an email sent to our Dean of Students and a Restorative Practices Coordinator that was then forwarded to me from an English teacher stating that the student had been looking at bullets on his phone in class. So,
Go ahead.
So the student was called down to the office by a Restorative Practices Coordinator who then called me to ask me to be in the meeting as social emotional support for the student.
And did you do that?
I did.
And do you know approximately what time that was?
It was approximately 9 in the morning on the 29th.
Okay. About how long did that meeting take place?
About 5 minutes.
And what was the student's demeanor?
Compliant, calm, understanding. I did not lead the meeting. I was just there in the meeting. But the student understood that it was not school appropriate behavior when that was discussed as the reason for being called in.
How did I know that he understood that?
He claimed that he understood that that was not school appropriate behavior.
Was he argumentative?
No.
Was he oppositional?
No.
Did you get any other information about that incident?
no other information about that incident.
Did he have any explanation as to why he was doing what he was doing?
He did. He stated that the previous weekend, mom and him went to a gun range and went shooting, that it was a hobby that they participated in, and he was researching regarding that hobby.
Okay, now I'm going to skip a little bit further, and we're going to listen to him explain a little bit more. I'm going to play a couple different clips of him because I want you to, let me put my camera back on for a second. I want you to, my phone keeps beeping. Let's turn that off. And that is Mr. Keith. Keith, stop it. But I want you to kind of understand some of the dynamics that were going on. And the reason why I keep putting the video on and then taking myself off the screen is I'm reading a lot of what you guys are saying in chat, because I know there's going to be a lot of questions, and it's really hard to read all of it while you're talking and looking in the camera and having that play. So that's why I keep letting it play. So I want you to know that I am reading your questions. And of course, the big one that keeps coming up is about the gun, right? And I agree. I don't disagree. But one of the things, again, that keeps getting called up was when they bought him this gun. Like, and you'll hear in a minute, I'll just give you a little preview. Ethan contends in his journal that was read by no one else that the gun was hidden and he had to find it. So the parents saying that they did hide the gun from him is true. But in terms of buying the gun, another thing we're going to learn later on in the second half of the trial is that Jennifer was told by several friends, experts, the school, that she needed to spend more time with Ethan. And one of the things he wanted to do was to go to the range. So that is why she went to the range with him. When we show that video clip, you're going to see, and I almost even hate to show the video clip. So it's in the court hearing, but I just want to tell you what you're going to see. And I'll kind of warn you when it's coming, just in case it bothers you. But you're going to see him kind of come to life, engaging with his mom, showing her how to use the gun. It's very clear from their time at the range that she didn't know how to use the gun, and it was a bonding moment. Now, I know in hindsight that sounds horrid. I know in hindsight that sounds awful, because we know what would happen later. But in that moment, one of the people that's interviewed, and again, we'll get to, I know I keep saying that, but we'll get to that in just a minute. But one of the people that's interviewed is a guy that works at the range. And he says it's very common, in this particular area, for parents to come in with their teenage kids to learn about guns, gun safety, and to use the range. So then the next question I know a lot of you are going to have and are going to wonder is, yes, but not every kid that goes to the range with their parents. And there's a couple of people I've just kind of glanced down, and I know this case is bothering you, and we're not going to talk about it all night long. So if you don't want to listen to this case, I would say, we probably won't talk about this case past 9:45, but if this case is triggering you, is bothering you, that's what time I'm going to try to end this case. I totally get that. It's a hard subject. It's really hard to talk about. And I want to make sure, we always, and we will end it with making sure that we highlight that this is about, really the kids that lost their lives that day. But it's trying to figure out, by looking at what's happening in this situation, can we prevent it in the future? Because there were warning signs that were missed by everybody. Not just by his parents, but by the school. And I think, that's again where this question about the parents came in, is the school didn't think it was serious. And you'll hear that in just a second. The school was not concerned that he was going to do something of this nature. So again, not relieving the parents of any blame per se, but especially not from a moral or a parental perspective. As a parent, there is, I feel like they totally missed the ball. They totally let their kid down. I'm just talking about from a legal perspective, and that precedent perspective that we were talking about a minute ago it's bad parenting. It's horrible parenting, but is it a criminal act? And so that's really what we're talking about here, and what they're trying to get to the root of, because for a couple of different reasons. One, so it can help to be prevented in the future. What could have been done differently? If we don't study history, we're doomed to repeat it. I'm sure you've all heard that. If we don't look at these cases and figure out what went wrong, where was he failed? Why was he failed? Could somebody have figured it out? Could somebody have figured out what was going on and stopped it? You know, I don't know. I mean, it's hard. We don't know the answer to that question, but that's why we look at cases like this, and that's why we kind of dissect them and break them down and go, where was the ball dropped? Where were the warning signs missed? So I do understand that if it's too hard for you to listen to and to talk about and to watch, I get it. It's a very, very hard subject, especially knowing that 4 innocent children lost their lives. So we will try to end this right at 9:45 and then go into the South Carolina Murdaugh case. So if you feel like you need to step away and come back, by all means, I do it. It won't hurt my feelings, and I totally understand. So we're going to go to our next clip, and that is basically right here. And if you just listen to the words, that's kind of what I'm wanting you to hear, the words he's saying. And I don't want to blame this man at all, but the point that they're making and the reason why they keep grilling him on these questions is that he didn't think that Ethan was a danger to anyone at the school. He was only seeing that Ethan was depressed and possibly a danger to himself. So the point that the defense attorney was making is that if the school didn't think that he was a danger to others, you know, is it possible that James and Jennifer truly didn't think that he was a danger to others? And again, we're not talking about whether or not they were bad parents or whether or not they didn't do their job as parents, but whether they're criminally negligent. And so that's kind of where all of this is leading to. So I'm going to flip back over to him and let you listen to him.
Any reports of him being bullied?
No.
When was the next time you had any
Oh,
interaction?
that's too fast.
The morning of November 30th.
And how did that occur?
I had received an email from a co-teacher in that English class stating that he was looking at a video on his phone. The video was of some sort of shooting. It was said in the email that it was not an actual event. When I met with the student, it was described as a video game.
Okay, we'll get there in a moment. About what time was that email?
That email was sent to me at 8:30. I saw it at 8:50.
Okay, and anything else occur after that?
Yes, around the same time the student had switched classes and was in his math class. That was when there was drawings done on his math assignment.
When was the first time that you were alerted to this math assignment?
Our dean of students came to my office around 9 a.m. To let me know that he had received a picture. Actually, had been shown a picture of a math assignment.
And did you see it at that time?
I had not seen the assignment at that time.
Okay, what if anything did you do next?
I went to the classroom to get him out of the classroom to have a meeting with him.
And when you greeted him, how would you describe his demeanor?
I didn't see much of a demeanor at the time. He was sitting in the front row of the classroom. So I just said, hey, we need to talk.
Okay, what did you do after that?
I was standing with him. He stood up and followed me out of the class. I had grabbed the math assignment off his desk.
Okay, and you took him back to your office?
Back to my office where
Okay.
the dean of students was waiting.
All right, and tell the court what happened in that meeting.
We had a conversation regarding initially the email that I had received about the video.
So when you're talking about, we had a conversation, we're talking about you and Stephen Broadway.
Correct. So I had a conversation about the video to ask what it was, because the email was not overly descriptive as to what it was. And that's when he told me that it was of a video game. I never saw the video, so I had a description of it being a video game per the student and not an actual event per the teacher who had referred it.
Okay, so at the time that you brought the student into the room and had the meeting with him, you knew about the email and you had heard about this math assignment.
Correct.
And you had it in your hand.
Correct.
What was the purpose of bringing him into the office? Was it a violation of a school code? What was your role and why did you meet with him?
At the time, I did not know whether there was a violation of a school code or not, based on having not observed the drawing at the time. I did have concern about the student because it was a couple of messages in a couple of days, and the purpose of the meeting was to find out what our next steps would be.
When you said you had concern, what was your concern?
My concern was that I wanted to make sure he was okay.
So what happened after he sat down? What did you tell him he was there for?
that we had to discuss an email I had received, and also we had to discuss his math assignment.
And how did that go?
At first, he was very similar to how he had been the previous day, compliant and understanding. With the email, he regarded it as a video game, stated that he had an interest in designing video games after high school. Then I put the math assignment in between the two of us. He sat across from me at my desk, and I said, I would like to go over some of this. He said that it was a video game drawing that he had done in relation to the pictures that were on the assignment.
At that time, there were 2 versions of that math assignment.
Correct.
Okay. Which version did you have?
I had the hard copy version, which had been doctored.
Okay. And that's
Is
exhibit.
that admin doctor?
Had been
I'm going to
doctored.
show it, Your Honor. That's exhibit 78. Mr. Hopkins, is this what you saw at that time of the meeting?
Yes,
Okay. And you asked him about this exhibit 78?
I did.
And what was his answer?
His answer was initially that it was a drawing of a video game he wanted to design. I then asked him to explain some of the words that had been written on the drawing.
Like what?
One that I could read was "My life is useless," and so I wanted to ask, what does this mean? This does not sound like a video game.
Okay. What did he say?
His demeanor then changed. He became sad.
And when you say he became sad, what did that look like? Why did he become sad?
He started pausing more in his speech. He then described some things that had happened recently in his life.
What were those things?
He talked about how a family dog had died. He talked about that he had lost a grandparent, that COVID had been incredibly difficult for him, that being out of school the previous year had been difficult for those virtual days. He talked about a friend who had left, that wasn't able to attend school anymore, had moved. And he talked about an argument about grades a previous night with parents.
With what?
With his parents.
Okay. What did you do next?
At that point, I determined that there was enough suicidal ideation based on his sadness and based on some of the.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and forward now. And remember, I know the mods are saying it too, but everybody remember, we're all coming from a different place. So let's be nice to each other. We all have different experiences. We all have different backgrounds that we're bringing to the table when we're listening to these things. So it may be, not hard to listen to for some of us, may be really hard to listen to for others of us. And I totally get that. But I just want you to listen to some of these things because like some of the comments I'm seeing, and keep in mind, again, I haven't made a decision, so I'm not trying to steer anybody in any direction. But some of the comments I'm seeing, I think, are people that haven't listened to all this because some of this was really kind of eye-opening for me. Like one of the questions I saw, it was, what the school did everything they could. Well, no, actually they didn't. And I think even when you listen to and I'm normally not, I worked in the school. I was a teacher. I was a college administrator. My mother was a principal of a high school, and I am never one to quickly blame a school. And I'm not necessarily blaming the school, but I'm saying they didn't see the signs either. So I'm not blaming them and saying they didn't. I guess I should have said that differently. I'm not saying they didn't do everything they could have. I'm saying that the signs weren't that easy to interpret because, Ethan was very good, as you can see from what this counselor is saying, very good at assuading others that it's no big deal. It's no big deal. I'm fine. I'm just depressed. It's, I would never hurt anybody else. This is all about a video game. And yes, trained adults and hopefully parents should be able to see through some of that. But again, if he was intentionally trying to make sure that they didn't see through that veil, then he succeeded because there were many people, especially this man who is definitely compassionate, who is definitely trained, and who was spending time with Ethan and asking him these questions, only felt that Ethan was a danger to himself. And that is why he did not force the parents to take Ethan with him. He just really strongly, several times, encouraged them to get him mental evaluation. But that's why he let Ethan go back to class. But his biggest concern was that Ethan was not alone, that he didn't do something to hurt himself. he never really thought that Ethan was a danger to anybody else. So again, what they're building here is if he didn't think that and he didn't emphasize that to the parents and he was the one who was trained to kind of get to these things, then is it possible that the parents didn't know either? Remember, going back to the beginning, and I told you those two kind of questions we're going to be looking at is, did they know what was really going on with him? Did they know what was inside his head? Did they know what he was thinking? Did they know that he was a risk to others? And then should they be charged? And that's kind of where the gun comes in. Should they be charged and will they be convicted? Did they break any laws by letting someone his age, if they didn't know, right? If the question or answer to question number one was they didn't know, and this is what is happening in the case. And so I'm just kind of painting the picture for you. If the defense was able to prove that they didn't know what was going on with Ethan and that even the school didn't know what was going on with Ethan, then question number two, should they be charged and will they be convicted? And this isn't just me saying this is experts saying this part too, is that if the answer to question number one is no, they didn't really know what was going on. They might have thought he was a danger to himself. They might have thought he was having psychiatric problems, but they didn't necessarily know or think he was a danger to others. Then the answer to question number two becomes even trickier because it's not illegal. As long as a child or a kid is using a weapon with a parent at a range or is owning a weapon, hunting, and I know a 9mm and a rifle are different, but it's the same. They're both weapons. They're both guns. And again, we're just talking about the legal aspect. I don't think anybody would say that these two are going to get Parent of the Year, right? I don't think anybody is making that argument. I know I'm not, and I don't even think the defense is. The defense is just looking at it from a legal perspective and saying that if they didn't know he was a danger to others, then giving him access to that weapon it may be bad parenting, and it may be something that we wouldn't do ourselves and don't agree with, but is it a criminal act? Is it negligent homicide? Are they guilty of negligent homicide? Ethan is definitely guilty of murder, but are they guilty if they didn't know that he was going to do this? If they didn't know, then they didn't really break any of the other laws. So that's where the legal question gets kind of tricky. All right, so I just got like two more clips that I want to play of him and kind of getting to the point. And then I would love for you guys to call in and tell me tell all of us what you think.
It was, I believe, around 10:30.
Okay, so you, in the meantime, where was Ethan?
He was with me. I didn't want to leave him alone.
Okay, what were you doing?
We had further conversations about some plans for him after high school. Typically, when a student is waiting for parents to arrive, it's a nerve-wracking time for the student. And I don't want them to be focused on that moment if I can help it.
Backing up just a little bit about the risk assessment. When did you conduct that with Ethan?
It was prior to calling mom.
And what kinds of things did you ask him?
I asked him if he was a threat to himself or others. And his statement back to me was, I can see why this looks bad. I'm not going to do anything. I then asked him to describe some of the words and pictures that he had written on the sheets.
And what did he say?
He stated that the pictures were a video game, but when I asked him to go deeper into the words, he continued to display the sadness that we had discussed earlier of the friend not being able to attend school, dog dying, a grandparent dying.
When he said, I can see how this looks bad, I'm not going to do anything, did you stop there or did you ask him any more questions?
I asked him specific questions about what he had written. I did not ask any further questions about a plan.
Okay. And why not?
Because he stated that he was not a threat to himself or others.
Okay. When mom and dad arrived, let's back up. How many times approximately a year do you have a situation where you're concerned about a student's mental health and their safety and you call parents in?
12 to 15 per year.
Okay. And can you tell the court what happened when they arrived? Did you go get them or did somebody else?
I'm going to go and pause right here for a second, and I'll tell you, because I want to make sure that we don't lose people that want to call in. So I'm going to kind of just sum up what happens, and I'll play one last clip in this section and then open it up. Well, I mean, you're welcome to call in anytime. But really what he goes through here is he says when Ethan's parents came in, that they didn't hug him. They didn't say, you know, we love you, what's going on? He felt that there was some coldness there. And he felt like, you know, that this was a different dynamic than what he was used to seeing. So it was different for him. It was just, you know, something that he wasn't accustomed to seeing. And then, of course, he did tell them, you know, I think Ethan needs help. I think he is a risk to himself. And when he told them that, you know, he said, I think he needs to be seen. And then the mom, Jennifer, said, we can't get him seen today, but we will get him seen, essentially. And so that's where the question comes in, what to do with Ethan. And so he proceeds to say that his whole goal was to make sure that Ethan was not alone, because again, he thought Ethan was a risk only to himself. And so later it kind of comes up that yes, then he understood why the parents didn't want to take Ethan home and leave him home alone, because that was what he was stressing the risk was. So I'm going to kind of forward this to the end of this video, and then I would love for you guys to call in. Let's see, 221. And this really, here at 221, it really kind of just wraps it all up really nicely, what the defense is trying to say, whether you believe it or not. And again, I don't know if I believe it or not, but here we go.
The incident where Ethan was caught looking at bullets in the classroom.
Yes.
All of those things combined together, you were obviously concerned about Ethan and wanted to speak with him, correct?
Yes.
So when you took Ethan to back down to your office, you testified that you didn't know if there was a discipline issue. Can you explain that?
The items on the surface do not necessitate discipline.
So students are allowed to watch videos of shootings while in class?
I did not know what the content of the video was, and I wanted to make sure that I was with somebody who could get a complete picture of what was going on.
And you never asked to watch that video?
I did not.
And looking up bullets online, students are allowed to use their phones to Google things while they're in class?
Phone policy is class by class.
Okay. Is there ever a class where looking at bullets would be acceptable?
That is why we had the conversation about school appropriate behavior.
So the following day, when the video popped up in the math paper, you still did not know if there was a discipline issue for you to consider?
I do not do discipline, so I was with somebody who could help make that differentiation. At that time, I did not know.
And the person you're talking about is Mr. Ejak, correct?
Yes.
Dean students.
Yes.
Okay, I want you to hear one more thing, and then feel free, if you want to come on and talk about it, go ahead and call in while I'm playing this one last little part. And Chris, I did see your question, and it's not what they could do about it. It's the fact that they didn't even see that there was a problem. They didn't think there was anything to do about it. They didn't think he was a risk to others. So that's kind of the point the defense was making, is that if he wasn't a risk to others, then
yes,
that was the issue.
And when mom and dad came into the school, you had a conversation with them about what we see here written on this math work, correct?
Yes.
And you talked to them about the video that Ethan was caught watching?
Yes.
And you told the parents that you had done an assessment to determine if he was a threat to himself or others, correct?
I told the parent that I believed he was a threat to himself in spite of his statement.
You believed he was a threat to himself despite his statement?
Yes.
And you say that Jennifer and James wanted to leave him in school. Isn't it true that you gave them the option to take him home?
Absolutely not.
I'm sorry, say that
That
again?
I gave them the option?
To stay in school or go home?
I did not provide options. I provided the recommendation that he gets help as soon as possible today, if possible.
Okay. If you thought it was inappropriate for Ethan to stay in school that day, could have said he has to leave, correct?
I could have stated that, correct.
There are kids who get in trouble for things and get sent home, and they have to leave the school and go home, correct?
When discipline is involved, correct.
There are kids who vomit at school and have a temperature, and when that happens, they have to leave school.
How is vomiting in school?
Okay, and I'm going to they debate this for a second, and then the interesting point comes here. And so I see Miss Debbie Campbell down there waiting on me. If anybody else would like to call in and chat with us, please go ahead and call in. And I'm going to put us all on the screen and then play one clip together. But let's see, where is it? Okay, that's it for that one. Let me close out that one. Okay, and here we are with this one. And I'm going to put Miss Debbie in. Hey, Debbie, how are you?
Good.
Oh,
Briggs says hi.
Hi, Briggs. We are loud. Okay, there we go. Hi, Briggs. How are you?
Say, I'm doing good, but I don't know where Tyler is.
I know. Briggs is probably missing Tyler.
But you're much cuter than Tyler.
Oh, aren't you sweet? I would love to hear your opinion of this mess that we have been watching.
Well, I watched this portion too, and I was really surprised, but now it makes a lot more sense to me when the counselor said he was more concerned about Ethan hurting himself rather than hurting other people.
Yeah.
And I could see that, as a teacher, as you know, I could see him going down that direction because the boy's looking at guns, bullets, drawing terrible things.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't remember everything that he had drawn, but it seems as though most of the drawings and things were about, it was blood and guns, and I can't remember everything that he had drawn.
Yeah.
But I don't recall. I guess what I'm trying to ask is when he was those drawings were out, was there anything about killing other people in those drawings?
Not in the drawings. And so we're going to talk about the journal. We're going to talk about the journal in a minute. And that was I'm glad you brought that up, because that was another one of the things that the defense kind of points to is that, in the first trial or the first time that we heard from James and Jennifer, a lot was brought up about this journal, right? And that goes back to that first question. Remember the first question, should they have known that this was going to happen? And the prosecution for James and Jennifer brought out a lot of stuff that was in this journal, right? But they are saying that they had never seen these emails that were to the friend. They had never seen this journal. And there was a lot made about, well, shouldn't you if you have looked at in the journal? But the journal was also in the book bag. And so a point is made later in part 2 that the guidance counselor also didn't think to look in the journal. And I want to make sure everybody's really clear. I'm not blaming the guidance counselor. It's just that if he didn't see a need to do these things, is it reasonable to think that his parents didn't see a need to do these things?
And that was my thought too. However, I don't think they're off the hook.
No, I don't either. And I
can understand as far as the school is concerned. This guy was doing everything he could, and you could have gone 2 different ways on that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see now how he would be more concerned about him harming himself. And therefore, if the parents are saying, we can't do that, we have to go to work, well, then he would be left at home alone. That's worse.
Right.
We'll keep him in a controlled environment here, not having a clue that the boy would have been bringing a gun today. Plus, Ethan also made some very good persuasive arguments like, no, I'm really okay. And he sounds like he's intelligent enough to back it off to get the fire out from under him. And but the other thing that just broke my heart today was when that the guidance counselor was talking about when the parents came in, and they didn't even touch the boy. Put your hand on his shoulder like, Ethan, dude, what's going on, man?
Mhm.
You know, if the counselor's calling me and saying, we think your child is suicidal,
Mhm.
my heart is wide open for that baby. How
Mhm.
could that not have happened? How could that not have even gone through their minds unless they were so wrapped up in themselves that all they were thinking about is the appearance that it would have on them, the reflection that it would have on them.
I
That's
think
what,
No, I think that's a big part of it. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think both. I think they were so wrapped up in themselves, and then they were worried about how it was going to reflect on them. And
Mhm.
then there's also a part of me that says, and this, I want to make sure this doesn't come across like I'm pitying them. There's also a part of me that says they knew that he was like so bad that they had almost kind of turned their back on him as being hopeless.
Like giving up on him.
Right. But
Yes.
then that would
Yes.
speak to the fact that they should reasonably expect that something negative could happen.
Well, I know whenever I was teaching, there were many, many times that the parents were such good friends with their child, they
Mhm.
didn't know how to relate as a parent. I don't understand how that generation flips like that,
Mhm.
because my parents were never that way.
No,
I
mine
don't know
weren't
about
either.
yours, but
No.
time after time, I've seen that. For example, one kid I called and I said, hey, you know, your son is failing and I know he can do this, but he's just not putting in the work. And the mom says, I know. He's a ninth grader.
Mhm.
I don't know what to do about this. And I thought, okay, does he have a phone? Well,
Mhm.
yes, he has a phone. I said, you can take the phone away from him. You can do that. And it was almost like a light came on, like, I have that power to do that.
Mhm.
So for, 12, 14, 15 years, they've conditioned themselves that they are not the parent figure.
Yeah, or
And
that they don't want to be
it's,
seen as the
it's,
parent figure.
yeah, they're equal. They don't
Mhm.
want to be seen, or now that when they need to be seen that way, they can't be seen that way, at least in their minds. They
Mhm.
can't be seen. And then Melissa and I were kind of chatting about the parents, and we wanted to ask you what you
Mhm.
thought. Why did the parents run away at the very beginning? What was
Well, we're going to kind of get to that. I think
that?
that goes back to that they knew that he was beyond hope. So to me, they didn't even bring that up in this case, and I don't know if maybe the prosecution was just is holding that for the
Yeah.
real case. But that's the point that's always been in the back of my head, and honestly, that's where when I really have, I mean, it sounds like a cop out, but I really have this dual brain where I'm afraid for the legal precedent to be set that a parent is responsible for their child's actions because I can see that getting abused. We all
Yes.
know what happens to precedent, right?
Yes.
Precedent gets stretched like a rubber band, and pretty soon parents are going to be responsible, for well, it's going to start with parents. Parents are going to be responsible if their kid is driving a car and gets a DUI. That's going to now be both the parent, and maybe that should. I'm not making a judgment, but I'm just saying that's going to be the next step. After the precedent gets stretched to parents being responsible for anything their kids do wrong, right? So your kid goes out, does something stupid, fraternity event. Let's say I'm just
Right.
pulling something
Yes.
really out of there. A hazing event, right? So the parent gets charged, even though the parent wasn't at college with the kid. And again, that's college, but now we're moving the age. Well, when is it going to be that friends get charged? So not only, let's say you're out with a friend, your friend is drinking, you go your separate ways, they get in an accident and kill somebody. Do we now stretch that precedent so that because we didn't stop them, we become also just as guilty? So
Very
it's,
good point.
I know I'm like extrapolating on that, but my parental side says they failed him. The fact that those 4 children died because they failed him. then
Yeah.
yes, they should be responsible. But I feel like ultimately they should be civically responsible. I feel like they should get sued, through the teeth. I don't know that I'm ready to say that it's criminal. But
I'm with you on that because it's very scary to cross that line. And once that precedent is set, well, then, like you said, how far does that line go out? And I would hope that precedent is set. Well, then,
Happy, you gotta mute your YouTube.
And I would hope that
Happy, you gotta mute your YouTube. There you go.
Oh, hi.
Hey.
Hey. I think, oh, you know what? My video's not synced with the audio, so I'm a little confused. Did Debbie finish her point?
Yeah, but Debbie, you go ahead and finish your point.
Oh, I forgot my point. I'm happy to be happy.
You were saying about precedent. You were saying you were concerned about the precedent too.
Yes. Oh, I know what I was going to say, but hopefully a judge can see through that and for each individual case that happens. This is highly unique because there was so much around the parents with this particular case. And I can't name any other case that it's been like that. Can you?
No, and they only found this actually came up, like whether or not there was any precedent for the parents being responsible. And the judge will talk about it at the end of the second part. But the only cases she found, but she still ruled that they're going to trial. But the only cases she found were when young children were left unattended in the same room with an unsecured weapon. So that was the only cases she seemed to find. And I want to let Happy talk and then Aletha talk. And then Debbie, you can talk all you want and I'll catch up while y'all are talking. But Robin, I do want to address this question. That's exactly why I fault the parents. Knowing his issues, why would you provide a gun? Well, remember, I don't know if you've been here since the beginning. Oh, Aletha, you all right?
I'm here.
Okay.
I just laid the phone down. I didn't fall.
Okay, good.
Although I do that occasionally, but not just then.
Okay,
I'm sorry
good.
I scared y'all.
Yeah, it did scare me for a second. But so Robin, I don't know if you were here at the beginning, but that's one of the two questions that the defense was trying to answer or trying to argue that they didn't really know. And they really showed some strong persuasive evidence that they may not have truly known. It's easy to look back in hindsight and say, oh, that's a sign I missed. That's a sign I missed. Y'all are about to hear my dog's bark because my son's coming in. But that's a sign I missed. That's a sign I missed. But in the moment, those things may not have been as much of beacons, as much of red flags in the moment. So Robin, that is what we're talking about kind of is the defense was producing some pretty good evidence saying they may not have known and they may have known, but they didn't think he was going to hurt somebody else. They didn't think he was going to do these things. So Happy, go ahead and give us your 2 cents, and I'm going to add Deb to the screen too.
Okay. Yeah. So I had to laugh when you said sometimes you have a dual brain because I'm so much like that, and I like emotionally, like I can feel something really emotionally, but like my logic side, like as far as the law and setting precedents. So I try to also separate my emotions and like emotionally, like I want to have a lot of criticism towards the parents, and it just, the more that comes out, you just see more how, he, they weren't in tune and they were neglectful as far as just a lot of things. But when I didn't see all of the court case today, but I saw the first one, the previous one, and I saw parts of today and then what you showed. And this idea of precedence, I was thinking about, especially towards the end, because, on one hand, I feel like, parents have to be responsible and accountable for some things. But as far as thinking about the future, before the judge shared that one case, I was thinking, well, I wonder what would be the implications of this in the future going forward. Like, to me, like emotionally, I just feel like the parents were so responsible as far as not being understanding and recognizing where he was at emotionally and psychologically. But as far as if there would be a ruling on this, how it would impact other cases going forward, like you said, like the slippery slope, like might seem like very clear cut in this case, especially seeing, the deaths of these poor children. But in the future, would there be other cases where it's not so clear cut and have, an impact on parents that truly, honestly didn't know and were totally, didn't see any signs. But then when the judge did minute, so I was thinking that there was no, because people had talked about presidents. So I thought there was no. Oh, hold on a second.
Oh, that was Kathy.
Oh, okay. So I thought that it was the first case, but then the judge mentioned a case. So I guess I have a question about that. So you're saying that the one she mentioned, it just had to do with small children, so it's not equivalent to this case, or
That's where I think the question is going to be. It had to do with the cases that exist on precedent have to do with children. And this is what worries me, because I really think, from the beginning, I was kind of thinking, well, maybe Ethan just had a really rough upbringing and maybe he can be rehabilitated. I really am leaning away from that. The more I see the things that have happened, I think he might be, I'm not trying to diagnose him. I'm not a psychiatrist, but he has signs that seem to indicate that there's some psychopathy there. And so I'm not sure he can be rehabilitated. So I'm afraid that if we keep down this road of using precedents of a child getting a hold of an unsecured weapon, they could reduce the charges and try him as a juvenile, because I don't see how they can have it both ways. I don't see how they can legally say his parents are guilty of involuntary manslaughter because they let a child, have or be unsupervised with a weapon. Although, even though we do learn the weapon was hidden, and that even is said in Ethan's words, he had to find where his dad had hid the weapon. And, so there's some question there, but I don't see how they can say he's, from a legal perspective, again, not moral, but from a legal perspective, he was a child and they are negligent because they left a child access to a weapon, but yet then he's an adult and knew what he was doing and should be tried as an adult. That's, to me,
you can't have it both ways.
I think they're going to get themselves in trouble. And I would rather see him get convicted as an adult and them be held civilly, I have a hard time with that word, liable to these parents that lost their children. Because I think it's going to be a bigger disservice to them if Ethan gets a juvenile type sentence or a mental health type sentence and is out in a few years and they have to see him.
Right. Yeah. So when people are not looking at all those aspects, just like emotionally, I think, people would want to just, rightfully so, see justice and see the parents taking some accountability for their not cluing in to his needs. But when you look at the bigger picture, and if people, do feel that it's right that he be tried as an adult, then they may not be aware that there could be some implications dependent on this. But I do have another question.
Sure.
So how does that fit in with, like, I don't know a lot about law, but like the case, I'm thinking about a case where someone has a car wreck and they and so they're not purposely trying to kill someone, but then someone dies. And then, like, as far as like manslaughter, there people are held responsible for negligence. So how would that play in? Like, it doesn't have to do with it being a child, but just negligence. And
Well,
I
that's
guess it goes back to them not, you know, uh, the defense attorney trying to prove that they according to what she's saying, that they weren't aware. And then just one more thought is, you're talking about, he said that he had to look for the gun and that it was hidden. And from what I understand, there's an obligation for parents to secure a gun.
Mhm.
And so even though I thought it was like hidden under I may have this wrong, hidden under the bed, and that's not like safely secured. So do you know anything about that? And
No,
then
I don't.
after that,
I
I'll
do.
get off. So
All
if
right.
Mhm.
Deb Galloway does. Deb, go ahead and
Well, I just wanted to say I live in Michigan,
Mhm.
and right now they're trying to push laws through to force parents to keep guns locked up, because right now there is no law that says they have to.
Okay.
So that's kind of one of the bad points, but it may end up finally pushing laws through. I mean, that's what people are working on it. So that's one thing about that.
No,
that I
so
do
it's not.
know.
That's a really good point. Thanks, Deb, because that I didn't know. So
Yeah.
really, they didn't break any laws. And
No.
and Candy was mentioning for buying an unstable person a deadly weapon from a parental and moral aspect. I would agree with you, but again, that's what the defense is trying to prove, is that they didn't know he was that unstable. And
But I
go ahead.
got something. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I
No,
got
go
something I
ahead.
wanted to say about that too. His mom knew what he was planning. I don't remember if it was just local news, because I live not real close. I'm about an hour away from there. But when she first heard word of something going on at school, I don't remember if it was somebody said shooting or something, she immediately sent Ethan a
Mhm.
text saying, "Don't do it."
Well, I
That proves that she knew that he had that. And the drawing, um, the teacher took a picture on her phone of the original drawing,
Mhm.
and that original drawing showed the kid or whoever with the gun in his hand, and it showed two people laying prone, bleeding all over the floor.
Hmm.
As soon as the teacher took a picture of that with her phone and started to get with the office with it, he hurried up and changed it, and then he wrote different things on it and blocked off parts of the pictures. But I don't know if the counselor saw that part or not, but I
Yes,
do
he
know the
did.
off
He said he did.
okay. As I know, the office had the original and the one that he had changed it to, and the parents also saw it as well.
No,
Saw both of them, Deb?
yeah.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
counselor did see it, but that's what Ethan convinced him it was from a video game. And
Exactly. Yeah.
that's where, and now, as far as the parents saying that's Ethan, or I think that's Ethan, or Ethan, don't do it, the defense was saying that that's because they had just been at the school. Because remember, they had been at the school that same day.
Right. Yeah.
And
Just a
so
couple
then,
hours earlier.
so they were saying don't do it, because they thought that it escalated from that point where he was. So it wasn't, they were saying, and again, I'm just kind of repeating what the defense was. I don't know if I even believe it, but the defense was saying that that's why they thought it could be him, was because they had been called to the school and seen the paper, and he had said it was a video game. But I'm sure any reasonable person is going to wonder, even if you don't know, if that's.
Well, him and his mom had plenty of discussions about, he was always home alone. Dad was working. Personally, I think mom ruled the house. Dad kind of went along, which doesn't excuse dad. Don't get me
Right.
wrong. I don't think it excludes either one of them. But him and his mom, texted her a lot while she was out riding horses, and he was telling her how he was hearing voices and people were breaking in and demons were doing this and
Yeah.
smashing the kitchen and all this. And that happened many, 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 many times. And she just always kind of blew him off. So she was aware of what was going on with him. Not that I think it excuses what he did either, because I don't. But, and I agree with what you're saying about the court and what they're trying to do,
Mhm.
because I think you're right. And it's hard because I think that they do hold a good deal of responsibility, but yet I don't want it to let him off because he's got major issues.
Right. That's
And
my concern. I don't
yeah,
want him to get off as a
no,
juvenile because they want to get them, because
right.
they can get them, I mean,
Other ways.
yeah, and there's, I mean, being again, she knew he had mental problems, but the question is, did they know he was going to do this, right? Because, I mean, that's one of the things, and I forgot to mention this, but it comes up in this beginning of this video in a second. But they keep asking the guidance counselor, did you fill out, like, what else could you have done, right? Did
Yeah, I
you
know.
fill out a form that would have basically alerted CPS to this neglect that, and please, I always am so concerned that people are going to think that, no, I don't mean that I don't believe it's neglect. I'm saying I'm acting as if I am the defense. And said the
Right.
defense said, did you fill out Form 3200, which basically would have alerted CPS that the counselor felt like the parents were guilty of medical neglect by not getting him medical help. And the counselor says, no, I never felt the need to do that. I never, and so that's where, again, that gets kind of tricky, because if
Yeah.
the counselor is saying he, in his professional opinion, did not think that the parents not getting him help right then and there was neglect, then that totally violates the definition of what they're being charged with, negligent.
Exactly.
So it's really tricky.
And I don't blame him either, because he had
Oh,
such limited exposure to Ethan to begin with that, he wouldn't have seen anything except that danger to himself.
No, I don't.
So,
I want to be clear that I am not. I feel so sorry for that man. I am not blaming him.
oh,
at
no,
all.
no, no. No,
I'm just
I
saying.
didn't. No, I didn't think you did,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying I understand, his viewpoint as well, because I don't think he really had the opportunity to see anything with the limited amount that he had actually been around him.
Yeah, I don't either. I think the point that the defense keeps driving home, and unfortunately this counselor is a sort of victim of their defense, is
Yep.
that he didn't even see it, that
Yeah.
he didn't see the issues and he didn't see the problem. So if he didn't see it, isn't there a chance that the parents didn't see it? They might have
Exactly.
known that he was mentally ill, but it's not against the law to know your kid's mentally ill and not be able to deal with it. The only
Yeah.
thing that would have been against the law is if they left a gun where he could access it and they knew what he was going to do with it. And that's what I think some people keep missing a little bit. And what is so confusing is it can't just be one or the other. It can't be they left a gun. You have to agree with both parts. You have to say, yes, they knew he was going to shoot up the school, and then they left a gun where he could do it. If both aren't yes, then that's not involuntary manslaughter before the parents. So that's where it gets tricky. It gets
I don't remember what I heard where and when, because I heard a lot on local immediately that then I never heard again. And a lot of it was how much his mother really knew. And that's why I truly think that she knew exactly what he was planning and just didn't care. I hate to say it, but I really don't think she did. But by the same right, I still think that you're right saying that they can't hold them liable in that sense, because it's not going to work to keep him going as an adult either.
Yeah.
So it is, I mean, their team is doing a good job is what it
Mhm.
amounts to.
It is. Their team is. Kathy or Aletha, y'all want to chime in?
Can I say something
Absolutely.
to Kathy before she comes on?
Uh-huh.
So this is her first time calling in, and a lot of us encouraged her to. She's such a wonderful support to people in chat. And Kathy, thank you for coming on. And I just want to tell you that people are so appreciative of you. You are so, in fact, I think you were the first person to say hello to me when
She was the first person to say hello to me
Yes,
too. Happy.
I think she's the first person to say hello to hundreds actually.
Yes.
So I just want to tell you, Kathy, that people really love you and appreciate you. You're so warm and friendly, and so I just want you to know there's lots of love and support here. And I know she felt nervous to come on, and I know there's just a lot of love. It's nerve-wracking for anyone to call in. I still get very scared, but I know there's a lot of love here for you. So I just wanted to say that. And if someone's waiting to get in, I can jump off.
No, nobody's waiting right now. It's just us.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
Okay.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Hold on. I got to put Aletha in. Let's see. I think I can get everybody in here. Let's see. Okay, I think that's everybody. I forgot to scroll down. I'm sorry. Chris.
Well, I'm happy to jump off too. So, you know,
I
just
think
let
we're
me know.
good. I have 2 Alethas in here, so I'm going to remove that one. There we go.
May I speak real quick?
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to kind of say thank you to the chat and family for welcoming me. I've been going through a lot with a divorce and a custody battle where my ex-wife is trying to move to Maryland, which is 6 hours from Massachusetts, and she's trying to take full custody of my son away, and he's the biggest part of my life. But with that being said, I also want to play devil's advocate on this. I mean, I'm more my son's friend, also a parent. I can correct him when needs be, but it never comes to that because he listens and respects me for the relationship we have, where his mom is from Ukraine, which is very...
Oh, bless you.
I don't want to say communist, but very strict and like opinionated, and it has to be one way and that way only. And he has a very difficult time transversing from one side of the house to coming home to me, where it's, you know, use your imagination. There's more ways than one way to do one thing. To this case, though, which I wanted to reflect on, you know, being a child's friend isn't a negative thing, depending on how you do it. Obviously, there's a right and wrong way. You can be too much of a friend and you can be too much of a parent. My son and I've had guns since I was 6 years old. My son has access to guns. He's 10 years old, meaning through me, he has access to guns by himself. He has a pistol I bought for him, 22 semi-auto, which he can only use with me, and we do target shooting. He knows all the rights and wrongs of a gun, how to aim at a field, at the target, how to disassemble it, how to clean it, how to load it, unload it, how to tell if it's safe or not safe, all that stuff. But towards this case, one thing I wanted to say is I think the teachers in the guardian, what's the people that check on the mental health? Yeah, thank you. Guidance counselor. There's a huge privacy difference between what the parents have access to of the child versus what a teacher has access to. Whether the child brings the diary to school or not, it really shouldn't matter. That's more of a parent's job versus a teacher's job to go through that. Regards to their art projects, I remember in 3rd grade or maybe 5th grade, one of the two, it was K through 8th, my school had us do a poetry class, and I did a really positive poetry, my first one. And then I read one of my friends, which was really dark and negative. So I tapped into my dark side and I wrote it out. And my teacher crumbled it up. And I thought it was one of the best poetries I ever wrote to this day, from what I remember of it. And she said, "This isn't you. This ain't your personality. Don't act like this." And she threw it away on me. And it was a way of me expressing myself that I don't express a lot because I was bullied a lot, and I always was smiling and laughing and making jokes to make somebody else's day better than my own because my day was never that great. So they took that away from me, and I went back to writing the positive poetry, which wasn't as good. And I felt like something was taken from me that shouldn't have been. With the guidance counselor, they don't have the right to go through the privacy of a child's home life unless it has to do with abuse, neglect, or anything else towards that. Other than that, a school teacher's job should be school related with school projects and school life or home life towards
Foxy
abuse.
once again hitting the roads tonight, bringing you a live look
But
at
the
conditions from
parents
the
should
weather
learn
beast.
the right
as
way
we
to communicate with their child, and there's not one set rule on how to communicate with the child.
Right.
And one thing I realized with my son is he can manipulate better than anybody else I've ever met in my life. He's a salesman and a half. He can tell me his mom said this and this happened and that happened, but then I talk to his mom or the teacher or this or that, and it's nothing near what he said. So even with his dad thinking it was all right to buy a gun, which the dad might have thought it was okay, but maybe the mom didn't, or vice versa, the lack of communication, especially between split parents or troubled parents, if they're having trouble in the relationship, especially with the rumors of them both cheating, that could be a huge issue. Especially if one is not willing to listen or hear what the other parent is saying or doesn't want to believe them. So almost sounds like the split family really caused a lot of harm. And when that child was alone through the drama of the split family and the neglect and the absence of both parents, and the child maybe feeling that the horses came first and the fights between the parents, his only excuse or way to get attention was claiming the voices or having the feeling somebody was breaking in or he was tortured or tormented, whatever the case was. And then whatever was going on in school on top of it, I feel like he felt like there was no way out or no one listening that would understand his side.
I agree with you, Christopher. I think that's a lot of what was going on. That's my opinion. But I think the kid was just crying out. And when he was texting his mom and saying, you know, I hear demons and I hear voices.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm not making excuses for him at all. He pulled the trigger.
No.
He's the one that did it, of course.
Right.
And I agree with that. And it relies on his own actions. Like, when I was bullied in 3rd grade, I remember thinking about, like, video games and, like, what it would look like if I shot the school up or this, which isn't appropriate at a 3rd grade level. But I never went and did it, even though I had access to guns because I knew it was wrong. I knew what the difference of reality versus virtual reality or video games was, but it was a way to cope in my own mind, but I never expressed it and I never felt like actually doing it. And it's a very scary thing to have a child go to that extreme, even never mind actually taking a gun to school or a knife to school.
Yeah.
And it's very sad that he had to go to that point where his mom didn't take him to the horses. Like, that's all it took. Was his mom taking him to the horses, letting him ride, not him crying out for it, or letting his dad take him to work with him once in a while, or that guidance counselor. You know what? Let me show you what my job entails, and have him walk around through school with him and show him different things that the teachers do. That kid needed a authority figure to show him a way of improving his life in a positive way, whether it was a priest or teacher or a parent. It just took either spiritual or mental or physical positive reinforcement to change that kid's life, and it was neglected every way around. And that's the saddest thing is not only did the community, the school, and his parents fail him, everybody failed that kid.
Yeah, I agree. Kathy, Aletha,
I agree.
Patty, what are your thoughts? Kathy, Aletha?
Hi, Kim.
Hey.
Kathy.
Hey. I didn't even hear your voice.
I haven't called in ever, so I don't really know. This is a tragic thing all the way around to me. You know, Ethan was failed by everybody pretty much, especially his parents, in my opinion. To see the pictures that Tyler put up of him when he was young, you know, his little games, and then to see him now. Can y'all hear me okay, by the way?
Very clear.
Okay. just such a difference in his eyes and how he, his demeanor. It's just
something definitely went wrong.
When I listened today to them reading the journal that he had, and I heard too that I think his heroes were Hitler and Dahmer. What parent wouldn't notice if a child has things about Hitler? Did he read everything online, or did he have books about Hitler? Did he have a book on Dahmer? I mean, it seems like to me the parents were oblivious a lot, or in denial, or too busy in their own lives that they didn't really give this child the time he needed.
Yeah.
Children just want our time and our love more than anything. They don't want things; they want us.
That's a very.
They
good
were
point.
disconnected.
If he already had a little bit of a mental thing going on there, they didn't help.
Yeah.
So my prayers go out to the victims and their families. I mean, that's just like I said, it's just a terrible tragedy all the way around.
It is. It is horrible.
Today it was disturbing in the court because they read out of the journal, and there was Ethan had written or had drawn a girl with a ponytail and the gun to the head and the blood. And underneath he said, yes, it has to be a girl, a pretty girl. She has to go. She has to be, I don't know if he said be killed, but she has to suffer like me. So he premeditated it, planned it, wrote about it, drew about it, so it's just so many things in this case. It's very emotional because you see a little bit of everything, you feel he was failed, and then you wonder where the parents were, what were they doing,
Absolutely.
It's hard, but everybody's made really good points, and so I'm enjoying the stream. And
well, I like hearing your voice. It's the first time I've heard your voice.
She's a Southern gal, isn't she?
Can y'all understand my Southern accent? That's one reason I didn't call in, because I'm like, half of them won't even know what I'm saying.
No, I understood it completely.
Anyway, well, I love everyone on the Feller fam, and thank you so much.
Oh yeah, we love you too.
We love you too.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Aletha, Patty, how about y'all? Y'all, what are you thinking?
Just wanted to be on with Kathy. Hey, how y'all doing?
Hi, Grandma Patty.
Oh, I just love that accent.
I just love
it. I wish I had a Southern accent. It's just so, I just
like
love it.
You sound Southern to me, honey. Honey, child, come back now, you hear? Get right in.
Oh, wow. And I had cornbread tonight. What about that?
Oh, there you go. See?
So did I.
Cornbread and biscuits. That's right.
Oh my goodness.
Right. Well, I'm back and forth on this case, flipping and flopping.
Me too.
I saw, you know what? I saw a picture of the lawyer, of the mom's lawyer, Mrs. Crumbley, Ethan's mom. And the lawyer was wiping perspiration off of her forehead. And I had such compassion all of a sudden for her, because that's what Jesus would be doing.
I tell you what got me, Grandma Patty, is in this part 2, and I knew we weren't going to get to South Carolina tonight. We'll have to get to South Carolina some other night. But in part 2, they start reading some parts of the journal. And one of the things that I don't know why, I don't know why it struck me the way it did, but they start reading parts of the journal. And the dad and the mom and the lawyer all just instantly, it was something about the kids and, I'm going to do it. The pain is too strong. It was reading the journal and you could tell it was real emotion. The dad is crying. He's wiping his face. The mom is crying. Like whether they're crappy parents or not, in that moment, they knew, and it wasn't for themselves. That's why it struck me. They weren't crying for themselves. They were crying for those that were killed. Because in the part that was being read, he was talking about killing others. And that's when they started crying. And I think that's why it got to me, because I was like, wow, they're not crying for themselves right now. They're not crying for Ethan. They're actually crying for what he did. And I think that's why it was like, And if you haven't watched it, I would highly encourage part 2. And what's really strange, just so y'all know, it says part 1, they're labeled wrong. The one that says part 1 is part 2. The one that says part 2 is part 1. So just when you go to look at them, look for the one that says part 1, but know that it's part 2. But yes, Grandma Patty, I flip flop like a fish, because it's just there's so many different emotions and thoughts I have about this whole thing.
Well, and so much more is coming out than what we knew with this hearing. There's so much about Ethan that has changed my feeling about it. I still don't know how I feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much about the parents that I still don't know how I feel about them. And I'm like you, logically, emotionally are two separate things. And seeing it, it's a blessing and a curse to be able to see it both at the same time. So I don't know. I'm going to go back and watch that again. I watched part of it, but there was parts that I missed.
I would definitely watch this one, the one that says part 1.
Part 1. Okay.
It sums it all up, and that's where the impact. I mean, because even in the beginning, while we're all on here, I want to go ahead and real quick, I'm going to play this one clip if I can find my notes, because I want to hear what y'all think, and it's actually a pretty short clip. It is at, let's see, and I have notes to myself like, don't play certain clips, because in the clips, the police officers use the profanity that was in there. So I want to make sure I get the right clip here. Okay, I'm going to put us all on here if I can. I don't know if there we go. Okay, I'm just going to play a few, like 2 minutes of this.
Understood.
Okay, Mr. Hopkins, earlier when you were testifying, you testified about being a mandatory reporter. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you would agree with me that that is a responsibility you take seriously.
Yes.
And when something needs to be reported, you absolutely report it and file a 3,200 form you're supposed to file, correct?
Correct.
And in this case, obviously, you did not file those forms. It did not rise to the level where you felt the 3,200 had to be filed, correct?
Yes.
And with that, your main concern was about Ethan's suicidal ideation. And my understanding is that's different than him being an active suicidal person. Is that correct?
Correct.
And with the suicidal ideation, going to therapy as soon as possible would have satisfied or helped the problem that you thought existed. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's why Ethan was not forced to leave school, correct?
There was no discipline issue. Correct.
Okay, and if mental illness could also be a sickness, there was no illness that caused him to have to leave either, correct?
I misunderstood. Please rephrase what you're saying.
Discipline is not the only reason a child would have to leave school. Ethan did not have to leave school that day, period, correct?
Correct.
You were concerned about the suicidal ideation, and you testified that Ethan would have gone into his, is it 5th hour after being in your office?
3rd hour.
I'm sorry, 3rd hour and then 4th hour and lunch, is that correct?
Correct.
Did you notify his teachers in the 3rd hour, 4th hour, or anyone in the lunchroom that you believed he might have suicidal ideation?
No.
And you obviously didn't do that because you didn't think there was any reason to have to protect him in any extra way, correct?
No, I would want him to be with people.
Okay, so him being with people was what was important, correct?
Correct.
And that's why him going home alone and having nothing to be working would also not have been ideal, correct?
Correct.
All right, so I'm going to skip to one more part that if I can find my point again, I'm going to skip to one more point that I want us to hear, and then we're kind of going to be done with the video because I know we're already hitting 10:15. I want to give everybody a chance to talk because Aletha, bless your heart, you've been waiting so patiently. So I'm going to play one more clip, and I need to make sure I skip the profanity because it's right around here. And so I need to be really careful with this because it's right around Oh, no, not right there. That is actually right where it is. Okay. Let's see. I think if I start right there, I should be good. Okay. If it's not, I so apologize. I've made notes, then so I hope my times are correct. But if I'm wrong, I very, very, very much apologize.
You just testified about the journal that was found in Ethan's backpack, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you testified it was approximately, how many pages,
21. 21 written pages.
Okay. And I'm going to provide you a copy, but is this one close right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Now, throughout this journal, you testified that you can see it's Ethan Crumbley's writing in the journal. And you can tell it's his writing based on the way he shapes letters, correct?
Yes.
It's fair to say that the only person who you can identify having written in this journal is Ethan Crumbley.
Yes.
There are no messages written in the journal like to Ethan from mom, anything like that.
No.
There's no messages in there from James saying, Ethan, I want you to do whatever after school. No messages like that. No writing from James or Jennifer Crumbley to Ethan.
No.
So as far as you can tell, this journal that has been called Ethan's journal was Ethan's possession. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, ma'am. Can you repeat that, please?
They have to argue for a minute, but this is important.
Okay. The journal that was found is believed to be Ethan Crumbley's journal, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And on the front, it actually says property of Ethan Crumbley, correct?
Written, yes.
Okay. And in the journal, in addition to writing about school shootings and other issues, there's also a continuous message.
This is what I'm talking about.
I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Is that correct?
A continuous message?
Well, let's start with page 775. We see there that he writes.
I don't have 775,
The
ma'am.
one that has forgive me at the bottom.
Okay.
Okay, so above the forgive me at the bottom and above the last passage that's written, it says, I'm sorry for this, Mom and Dad. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm doing this. I have to do this. Do you see that?
I don't, miss. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll get this figured out in a second, but it gets this. We're almost to the end of where I want you to hear.
So that first part, you see there's a message there that says, I'm sorry for this, Mom and Dad. I'm not trying to hurt you by doing this. I have to do this. Do you see that?
Yes.
And that's in human handwriting, correct?
Yes, it appears to be.
And then below that, there is a paragraph that's indented just a bit. And again, it says, I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad. I'm sorry for never saying it back. And then I love you to pets. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And then going a couple pages into the journal, also towards the back, the second to last page.
Yeah, this was his private journal, but it was in his backpack at school. Good night, Amy.
It would be page 21 on what the prosecutor gave me, page 794, what I have. On the bottom left-hand corner, you can see where he writes, I hope I can forgive me for what I do.
Yes, yes, I do.
And in this journal, it's fair to say that there is nothing know what he did. Evidence in this journal that shows Ethan told his mom and dad what he planned to do in terms of that school shooting. And if anything, his messages about his parents.
So remember, there was a couple of people that were saying, and somebody who's on the panel has some really loud background noise, and I don't know who it is. I've tried muting a few of them, but so just make sure check your background noise. And if and while you're not talking, maybe if you mute yourself, that would be good. That'd kick that background noise out. But somebody was saying, or a couple of people in the chat were saying that they were crying because he was saying, I love you, Mom and Dad. I hope you'll forgive me. And that's one thing. But no, I wasn't sure. So that's why I didn't want to contradict anybody. But no, it's right here when he was talking about, what he did. And, this is another good, the defense is good. This is another time when she's doing a good job of proving that, remember, both of those things have to be, the answer has to be yes. Yes, they had to know that he was capable of doing this, and they had to know that it was likely he would do something, and then they had to know that he had the means. So the gun being out, I don't know who. There's a lot of background noise. I'm muted. I'm muted most everybody now, but they had to know that the gun was there, but the other part had to be yes as well. And she's doing a really, really good job of kind of showing that they didn't necessarily know that he was going to perform this act. So I'm going to just rewind it for like 2 seconds, and this is the last bit I'm going to play. So just listen to what she says from the journal.
It would be page 21. I'm what the prosecutor gave me, page 794, but I have. On the bottom left-hand corner, you can see where it says, I hope my parents can forgive me for what I do.
Yes.
See that?
Yes, I do.
And in this journal, it's fair to say that there is nothing that indicates Jennifer and James know what Ethan is going to do in terms of the school shooting.
Repeat it, please. I'm sorry, ma'am.
There is no evidence in this journal that shows Ethan told his mom and dad what he planned to do in terms of that school shooting.
No, ma'am.
And if anything, his messages about his parents are more so ones of, I love you and please forgive me.
See, it was on, then there was nothing
Yes,
that
in the
said
journal,
he told
yes.
his parents what
Yes.
he was going to do.
On the last page of the journal, so it would be page 22 on what you
her
have,
last
and
kind of
page
point.
795 on what I have. I want to draw your attention to the left side of the page. There's writing written up the side. Do you see where it reads, I will have to find where my dad hid my 9mm before I can shoot the school?
Yes.
Now,
So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop that there because I know we're getting kind of late. But those are the points. Let me switch back to our all of us view. There we go. Those are kind of the points, and I'm going to add Chris. Chris, you better not be in an ocean. Okay. You bet. Oh, I got to unmute you. Hold on. I got to unmute everybody. There was some background noise. And so, oops, I didn't mean to do that, Chris B. Chris B, I accident. Okay, somebody's got some background noise. They're going to have to stop. Because otherwise, my ADD will be horrid. Okay. So those are kind of the points. Okay, so Chris W, you muted yourself, so I can't unmute you. Deb, there we go. You muted yourself too. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead. I don't know who that is, but anyway, we'll just work through it. Y'all talk.
The one moving. I would give it to the one moving.
So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts here about what we just I'm gonna just see if I don't know what's going on here. I'm gonna remove my there we go. Maybe it was my video. I don't know. Nope.
Mute
All right.
me and see if it's me.
Let's see. Yep, Alith, that's
Yeah.
you.
It was.
I was acting crazy tonight. Let me just go ahead and say what I was going to say, and then I'll get off.
I would love to hear what you always have such good thoughts. I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, the day that the counselor talked with him and his parents came in and they said that they had to go home. They had to go to work, and he didn't want him to be by himself, so he let him go back to school. Well, my thought was, school is over at 3:00.
Mm-hmm.
Where were they going to be? You know, most people don't get off work until 5. You know,
That's a very, very
maybe
good
even
point.
6. So he was still going to be by himself when he got home. I keep feeling like with these parents, they were just so self-absorbed. They had no time for this child. They were worried about their own life and whatever it was they were doing, what they wanted to do, how they wanted to do it. He was just an appendage.
I agree. They were
And
crappy parents for sure. I mean, in my opinion, I always feel like I need to preface it with that, even though I think everybody here has the same opinion. In my opinion, they were very crappy parents for sure. I don't know if it yet. I haven't figured out, and I guess that's a good thing. You know what? We're kind of their demographic. They're going to have a jury that's going to be kind of like all of us, you know, where we've all got different perspectives and points of view, and they're all going to have to agree. And I don't know how they're going to do it because at this point, I would have to be shown more before it would rise to the standard of a legal criminal charge for me right now. Even though I think they're crappy parents, they should never have been parents. They're so to blame mentally for this child and the deaths of those 4 children. I'm not sure they're criminally responsible. So
may I ask everyone a question?
well,
of course you may. What would you
I
like?
just want to know which one of you, when you get that letter, can be on that jury.
I could not.
I could.
I knew it. I was going to say it. You said it before me. I was going to say Chris could. I knew it.
I'm close enough. The thought is scary.
Yeah,
Well,
you theoretically could, Deb, right?
It's possible, yeah, because I'm only about an hour away, so it depends on how far out they stretch for it.
Yeah, if
Because
they
they're
go
not
out.
going to want people too close because there's 4 families that had a very wide array of friends that won't be able to be. Believe me, I've thought about that. It's a scary thought because, I mean, I could get out of it because physically me going down there and stuff, I have issues, so I could, but I don't know if I would want to use that as an excuse or if I would feel like I should do what I should do, you know? I don't know. But yeah, I've thought about it many times.
I don't think I could because I'm not sure I'll ever get to a consensus in my head because I'm so torn between what I know is morally correct and what I know from the legal perspective. And I'm so torn. I don't know that I'll ever get to one place in my head.
Well, that's why, Kim, you would be on a jury, because you're not swinging one side or the other until you hear all the evidence.
Yeah.
And they ask
That's what a good jury member should be. Like, they
Mhm.
shouldn't go in, this guy's guilty, you know,
Well,
or
at
this
this
guy.
at this point, wouldn't you already knowing things about the case and everything news wise, they wouldn't even let you on there.
I'm not sure that matters in some cases anymore because I think everybody does. Some of these high profile cases, I think they just have to go with people that don't that don't have an opinion yet because there's nobody that doesn't know about it. Well, I wouldn't say nobody. That's probably a stretch. But I don't think there's many people they'll be able to find that don't know about this case.
They ask if you are able to be unbiased.
Right.
They ask about bias. At least when I went for one before and sat and listened, I never even got called up, but I sat and listened enough times. That's what they always asked, if you could be unbiased or if you were unbiased.
I don't think that I could be unbiased about this case because I feel like that his parents are at fault. Even if they're not legally at fault, they're morally and spiritually at fault.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And
I think they were so busy being disconnected with each other that they ended up leaving him by the wayside without even really thinking about it, probably.
Well, it happens so many times when grown-ups, when parents are having trouble, kids suffer.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you know, there's probably never been a divorce that did not affect the children.
Heidi,
Okay.
let me.
I'm gonna get off here because my phone is acting crazy tonight.
Okay. Thank you for your
enjoy.
comments, Talitha. Love you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye. I want to read Heidi's post real quick right here because I think this is very close to how I feel as well. Parents have two things they need to do. One, love your child, and two, make sure they're safe. I don't think these parents did either. I think they will pay or at least pave the way for better laws. And I honestly think that's where, if I had to predict today what I think will happen, I do not think they will be charged with involuntary manslaughter. However, I think they will make a difference because in the future, it got so close to that happening that I hope that they're going to make a difference with other parents who are looking at their kids and saying, do I see these signs and I better do something about it, because next time that might be a guilty plea. So I hope that if they don't get convicted, that is what good comes out of it.
Yes, amen. Amen.
And that it changes laws about the gun safety here.
Yes.
Because that I think is very, very way over needed, because this is such a high hunting state. I mean, especially this area in particular. I mean, everyone that I ever grew up with practically hunted, you know, so everyone has guns.
Yeah.
Well, can I add, it's a very state by state law.
Absolutely.
So like here in Arizona, if I left my gun out and a 2-year-old kid grabbed it and killed and accidentally shot herself, I would be charged with manslaughter. But if I go to Texas, I may not, that charge wouldn't apply to me.
Yeah, it would.
So it's very state by state. It's not universal. What would be manslaughter in Michigan might not be in or in California might not be in Michigan.
That's why it's a fight, because it's not a legal thing that parents have to lock their guns.
And
So-
I've got to tell everybody, so just so we know, I feel bad sometimes because I feel like I'm smiling at weird times when y'all are saying things. But now I'm smiling at the chat or reading the chat and things. And now I know why Tyler does that. Like sometimes people will say, why is Tyler not paying attention? Or why is he smiling, you know, in the chat? And it's because you're reading the chat while you're listening.
Yep.
You're also taking the opportunity to read the chat. And I just want people to know I'm not smiling at inappropriate times. I'm actually reading the chat. Anyway.
Well, I was reading what Marissa was writing.
Right. Me too. And that's why I basically Chris, she said that you would, and any jury, you would be the holdout that hung the jury.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna get off. Briggs has to go outside.
Okay,
So,
Kathy.
We'll
Kathy,
see.
Debbie.
Yeah, Kathy, Debbie. My whole life that's been the way it is. I love you guys.
Love
Y'all are
you.
just amazing.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, bye. So Chris and Chris, we now have the two Chris's. We have Happy and we have Patty. Grandma Patty, is there anything else? You've been here for a bit and I haven't given you much chance to talk. Is there anything else?
Well, you know, that's basically all I wanted to say was a few words. But as far as they're throwing him to the wayside for whatever reason, they didn't connect with that child and he got lost. But you all remember they tried to ditch him when they were being arrested. Remember, they tried to leave town. They were going to ditch him while he was in jail. For goodness
They're
sakes.
definitely crappy.
Right.
Again, in my opinion, they are definitely crappy parents. They're just the worst. I just don't know if they're legally negligent. I don't know. I mean, luckily it won't be for me to decide. But I mean, my opinion is I just don't know if it rises to that level.
Right. I don't think it does.
I don't either, honestly.
Yeah. Today, let's say today, I don't think it does.
Yeah, because more could come out.
Right.
Well,
right.
It depends on how the state law is written. That's really what it comes down to, because as I said, if this happened in California, they may easily be charged with manslaughter for not locking up their guns. But and maybe I don't know how the specific law is written in Michigan. Like, do they have to lock up guns? Do they have to make sure that their kids can't get access to it? If they don't have that written in their law, then yeah, you're right. They will be found not guilty.
Well,
it really
go ahead.
depends on that. No,
Yeah.
that was it.
The judge actually goes into this at the end. There's only been, I can't remember if she said 3 or 4 cases in the United States where a parent has been charged for involuntary manslaughter. Now, there may be other charges like negligent homicide. I don't know. But for involuntary manslaughter, there was only like 3 or 4 times it's happened. And that was that point I was making. In all 3 or 4 cases, it was a young child was left unattended with a firearm, and a firearm that was not locked up. And so whatever the laws are in Michigan, what the judge said is what I was saying at the beginning, that those 2 things have to be proven. One, that they knew that there was a risk of him doing something like this, and then they left the gun unattended. And the journal saying, I have to find where my dad hid the gun is really in the parents' favor as far as that goes. And the fact that he kept saying in that journal, I hope my parents forgive me. I'm sorry, Mom and Dad, I had to do this, really seems to indicate that they didn't know that this was, that his mind, they may have known he was having mental issues, but those words seem to indicate that they really didn't know what he was capable of. And so that's why I think they will end up getting off on the legal charge, on the criminal charge. I think they will, something will happen at the level.
Yeah. Civilly, they may be liable big time, like they're going to get sued. But yeah, I don't know exactly how it's written in the Michigan law. Like you have to keep guns locked in a safe where nobody can have access. That's where it's going to come down to, is how the law is written. Per se, at first I was like, charge them, make them go to jail, but I don't know how Michigan law is written about that, and that's where I question if they will be found guilty criminally for those charges, because it's just how the law is written. And I know, and I'm guessing it's written in their favor, where it's going to be very hard to prove that case against them. As I said, morally, they screwed up, but also at the same time, the one point I wanted to make, nobody ever thinks their kid is a monster.
I agree. I 100% agree with that.
Nobody ever thinks their kid is going to shoot up a school. No matter how bad they are or how troubled they are, I don't think any parent would ever really think that they would do something like that.
Yes, agree.
Like, unless he flat out said, Mom, Dad, I'm going to shoot up this, I want to kill as many kids at the school as possible, they won't know, there's a bias towards your kid. Like, nobody will ever look at their kid as a monster. I don't know how they look at him now, but at the time before the shooting, I don't think they thought, well, he's not getting in trouble in school. He's not in constant.
Let me stop you real quick. I want you to keep going, but I want to bring up that point. That's a very good point. They asked the guidance counselor, has he ever been in trouble at school? He's only missed 1 day of school since his freshman year and has never been in trouble. So that's another reason. It's another point for the parents and the school to not think that he was only a danger to himself, because he had never shown signs of being, any kind of anything at school, although a lot of school shooters don't. But go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, and it's not like he's coming home every day with black eyes and being bloodied up. From my understanding, he wasn't being bullied or picked on or beat up, at school. So it's really hard. Like, there's no real profile of a school shooter. I don't think there's no this sign is going to shoot. I think the school got concerned, but how far could they really go with a picture and looking up bullets on a website?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think the only reason why it's brought up about the school is that if the guidance counselor who's trained to see when somebody could, oh, no, don't jump, my dog, sorry, was about to jump really high. if the guidance counselor who is trained, yeah, she was about to just like leap across. But
Oh, wow.
if a guidance counselor who
I'm
was
laughing at the wrong time. I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. See, that's what I had to explain a minute ago when I was smiling or saying something at the wrong time. But yeah, I think the point is not that they should have. For me, it's not saying that the school should have done more or the school failed. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if a trained professional didn't think that there were warning signs of him being a danger to anybody but himself, then there's a good chance too. I mean, again, I don't want to ever sound like I'm absconding the parents of responsibility, but I think from a legal perspective, there is a good chance that they could prove, or the defense could contend, that the parents didn't know either, because this legal, that's what they were trying to say. This professional didn't know he was a danger to the school. So how would we know?
Well, VC has a very good point down there.
Oh,
they said, don't do it. The mom in the text said, don't do it. Why would she say that?
Well, we don't know exactly what the context of that was. That could be because of suicide,
Right.
Like they could have thought he's going to shoot himself. You know what I mean?
All right.
That was the same day. The shooting was the same day they were called up there. So they made a big deal. The defense made a big deal about those times to say that the reason why they could have thought that and said, don't do it, or is that you, is my son the shooter, is because they had been up there that day, seen the papers, and while they didn't think there was a problem at that moment, okay, again, I don't know if they did or not, but
I think they knew when the news hit,
right,
that it was their son.
Right. I think that's the point, is that hindsight's 2020. They may not have thought in that moment when they were in the office, he's going to do this. When someone did it, they knew.
Yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely.
Wasn't there a case, and excuse me if I'm wrong on this, but wasn't there a case right after Columbine when all the school shootings were happening where they tried to charge the parents because the little kid had guns? He had AR-15 or something, went to the school.
Yeah,
and it didn't go through. Yeah, it failed.
It didn't even go this far. Like, this is the first time a judge.
Who is that who just wrote that up on there? That's a good point.
Lana McMurphy.
One of the things that does hurt their parents was that they posted, "This was my gift for my son, the gun." So, I'm sorry, it's a tiny screen. I'm talking on my cell phone.
No, it is small. It is very small.
But that's the one thing that does hurt them, is that they said, "I bought them this gift. Like, here's my son's gift, the gun."
But that's not illegal in Michigan, right, Deb?
It is for 18.
No, it's not.
And I do believe that a 9mm you have to be 21 to own. I think
to buy is what the gun.
To buy, yeah.
I had a gun.
Well, I don't know if it's to buy or to own. I mean, definitely to buy. You can't buy any gun until then.
Yeah, there was a gun store owner where it was bought was on here, and she said, and so did the range owner, that it's not illegal. But they made a big deal about it too. They said it wasn't his gun, that my just means my family's, But what the gun store owner said was that they can't buy a gun for a kid, right? You can't say, I'm buying this for my kid. The kid can't buy it. However,
he didn't say that when he bought it. Mom said it on Facebook afterwards or something. Right. Well, she said it in several places, I guess, but yeah, no, that's why Dad went and bought it, because he can't go buy anything at his age.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's, again,
red tape.
There's so many different things about this case. That's why Chris W., I know you chimed in a little bit, but is there something you wanted to say that we haven't already talked about?
Well, kind of, but I wanted to bring up, I would think that the parents could at least get fined. I don't think they did complete wrong. I mean, their parenting, right? Parenting is hard for most parents to have to deal with a child, like he was. I was looking back at the video from yesterday because I missed some at the beginning, and I remember you guys showing a picture of him younger, and then now, and then they were talking about his hair. Well, I would say from my experience, a nappy hair like that is a sign of depression.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Big sign. And then the eyes, if you look how droopy the eyes are, they look the same as when he had the long hair and did the shooting, right? So a lot of times sad eyes are a sign of depression. I believe I have a curse where I can see, the sadness in people sometimes, and it's not usually a good thing because some people go through abuse and a whole bunch of bad stuff. But I will say that I think the parents did in a way neglect seeing signs.
I do too. I think they were crappy parents.
Yeah, and then of course the fact that the counselor is like, somebody needs to be with them and all this stuff, and they're like, oh, we got to go to work, and they go to work. If my child was having trouble, dude, I would take off work and be like, no, I'm not going to work. I'll call in. If I lose my job, I'll lose my job. I want to be there for my
Boss came
child.
out and said, Mom's boss, sorry for interrupting, but Mom's boss came right out in court or to the court or something saying that she could have easily taken time off. No problem whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean,
Chris,
things
can I
like
ask you a question, Chris? Were they really? I mean, yeah, they missed signs. They were probably neglecting, but I feel like they probably weren't the best parents, but by far they weren't the worst parents.
No.
They weren't abusing him.
No,
they weren't
they weren't.
sexually abusing him. They seem to try to make a connection with them and be there. Like, parenting isn't something you can go to college and become great at.
Right.
It's a hard thing, and each kid is different. I feel
each
like
kid
they
is different.
tried.
I think that they were just, at this point, they were so busy trying to disconnect with each other because of the problems that they were having in their marriage that he just kind of got lost by the wayside. I don't know that they necessarily intended to to neglect him. I think it was just what happened, and them having that happen at the same time with all the COVID stuff, and all the schools were all virtual, so he was home alone all the time. I mean, it was just kind of, I think, a whole bunch of things going.
And that's another thing. COVID.
Yeah.
Especially the parents have to work, work and work, and then some people are losing their jobs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, there's actually there's kids that are actually committing suicide and self-harm during COVID, right? Like little kids.
And there's still around here, a lot of them. I don't know how it is everywhere, but here, all over this wide area that includes them, they've been closing down as often as they've been open still, even now. I mean, it just goes in waves. So I think a lot of things went into it. I don't know how much I could actually say I blame. There's a lot of things that I can see that were definitely wrong, but I mean, I did a lot of stupid crap with mine too because I was going through issues with my
But I
husband,
feel like
and
there's
then died,
tons of-
and it just happens.
I feel like there's tens of thousands of more worse parents out there.
Oh,
whose kids
absolutely.
don't shoot up schools.
I agree.
Yeah.
Man, okay, depression is a crazy thing. Your mind
Yes.
can be a crazy thing. Hearing voices, seeing things, because it's happened to me when I was going through anxiety and depression. I have things called dark entries that I've had since I was a little kid. And if people would have read my stuff, they would have saw the kind of what my life was kind of going into, the darkness and suicide and all that stuff, self-harm. And the thing is and I still write that stuff because I can write dark stuff and stuff of people of pain really easy compared to writing something that's happy-go-lucky. Because I understand
therapeutic too.
Yeah, and I understand that, right? So I can write it, and other people can be like, "Oh, he knows exactly how I'm feeling," So there's little signs, and even the stuff I like to do, and the type of stuff that I might say, small little snippets of stuff I might say, that are kind of like talking down about myself and stuff, are perfect signs that my parents or anybody or even friends around me could have seen to know that I had issues. And that's the thing. Nowadays, a lot of parents are so busy and stuff, they don't really spend a lot of time with their children. They don't see the small little signs.
Yeah.
And all children have that, right? These small signs are looked over, and then even sometimes you can go and you can be like, I have a problem and stuff, and it's kind of brushed over. It's like, oh well, just don't talk. Kids having a problem with another kid.
Mhm.
It's like, just don't talk to them. Well,
Yeah.
it could be deeper than that.
Well,
It
that's
could be
one of the things that his parents did, that they fall back on, the prosecution falls back on, is he told his dad, Dad, I'm depressed. I think I need to see somebody. And, there's some families are just raised that you don't get help for mental illness. And so his dad said, suck it up. And he told his mom
Yeah.
that he thought that he was seeing demons, and his mom said, kind of laughed at him, because that's, if you don't believe that's real, that sounds, kind of, I guess, ridiculous. So, it is that, definitely that situation. And I want to address Sammy. I didn't even bring this up, but Sammy, you asked about, I wonder if the parents were abusing substances. Yes, the police.
Yes.
Well, okay, so we're not going to get into this debate, everybody. We're not going to get into the green weed debate. Okay, the green herb debate. We're not going to get into whether or not it's a substance or okay or any of those things. But we will just say that in the basement of their house, there was a full grow operation going on in the basement of their house. So that was one of the things that was brought up by the prosecution, was, could that not also be negligent? They asked, because there was a full.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that either.
But it's also legal here too.
So yeah, so it was just
that's
about
a
his
slippery
age.
slope.
Yeah, it was about his age. So that's mentioned in this part, the one that says part 1, but is actually part 2. The police talk about when they go into the basement, that they find this whole grow system set up.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, well, I really appreciate everybody being on with me tonight. Does anybody want to add one last thought? Because I'm going to bring my husband on here in a minute. He doesn't even know this. He's probably about to kill me. But I'm going to bring my husband on here in just a minute and let him close us out in prayer for Ukraine and to prepare us for tomorrow for Faith Friday with Tyler. And so everybody, please make sure that you join us tomorrow night.
I would like
yelling at me from the other room.
I'd like to add one thing.
Sure.
How do I sound?
You sound perfect. No,
I spent 20 minutes setting up an engineering marvel. I think what happened yesterday was I had it leaning on the table, and my speaker and my microphone are right on the table, so it created reverb. I spent 15 to 20 minutes creating this whole engineering setup here where it's off the ground. Anyways, I just wanted to brag about myself.
You did amazing. And I know my husband.
Yay.
I know Keith will feel better if you'll all stay on while he comes on. So Keith, go ahead and come into the stream, and I will have.
Absolutely. Do you want us to leave?
Oh, okay. So we're going to trade spots. Actually, he's going to come here because he can't do it in there. So I'm going to let him. Stay right there. Okay. All right.
All right.
Bye, guys. I'm going to go back to the live chat. So.
Okay.
Bye-bye, Kim. Thank you. Love you.
Love you.
I was hoping that Patricia Wade would call in and declare close.
Oh, is Patricia here? She hasn't been here. Patricia, if you want to jump in and kind of jump on the prayer after Keith prays, I would love to have you in here too. And Debbie, whoever, anybody would like to pray, I would love those that are here to stay here while we pray. And if Patricia, if you or Debbie would like to jump in, I won't have my eyes closed while Keith is praying, so I can add y'all in case you pop in. But go ahead, Keith.
She's put me on the spot here. Dear Lord, we pray to you tonight, and we hope that you are watching over all the people of the Ukraine. We're hoping you keep them safe, keep their children safe, keep all the innocent people safe, and hope that the tensions calm down, and that those that are involved come to realize that in your glory and in your name, peace is the victor, and love is the only way to proceed through this world and through this life. And we pray for everybody on this chat tonight. I know everybody's torn about the situation in Ukraine, and I hope they find some peace and some calm, and that you give them that peace, and let them know that you're watching over everyone and everything, and in your hand They will be safe. We will all be safe. And we pray that in the mighty name of Jesus.
Amen. Patricia,
Amen.
would you like to add on?
Well, are you talking to me?
I am. Would you like
Oh,
to pray with us too? I love to hear you pray.
Father, I just thank you for each and every one who's joined us tonight on the panel and all of those in the chat. We just ask for your covering of blessings, protection, and favor. I think that everyone is giving good care in their thought process, thinking things through as if they were jurors. I just ask that you bless each one. I'm so thankful for each one of them, as we all are. With regard to Ukraine, I lift up the nation of Ukraine. They're a sovereign nation, Lord. You are the one who decides the boundaries of the nations, as well as you are the one who promotes people to leadership. I ask that your hand of guidance be upon the leaders, and where there is a tendency to move forward in ways that are not your ways, I ask that you would send your Holy Spirit wisdom upon the leaders. Protect the people from all of this. And I just ask that we would see your resolution to this matter and your will be done. In Jesus' name, thank you, Father. Amen.
Amen. Chris, is that your Ukraine tattoo?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. Very good.
It's a Ukraine coat of arms. When I was married to my wife, I got that. And I just want to say thank you to my ex-wife for giving me my son, even though she's trying to take him away. And I want to give God bless her mom, Baba Zoya, and her father, Derdushka Lake, and her brother, Vladimir, and my son, Vladimir. And I just hope that everybody in Ukraine stays safe and healthy and they can be where they need to be with their family and friends. And I want to thank this chat for being there for me through my hard times with my custody battle and me expressing that and for allowing my opinion. So thank you, everyone. And God bless everyone, and everyone's in my prayers as well.
You too. God bless you. Anybody else that's still left on the panel like to say anything?
I just wanted to point out to anybody that's dealing with has a child or a friend that's dealing with depression, pay attention to small, subtle things. And like my profile picture says, pain changes people. It makes them trust less, overthink more, and shut people out. So you have to be cautious on stuff that people do. Your children or your friends, you see small little changes, it's a flag.
Very good
Just
point.
Yes.
Very, very good point. Very good point. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight and joining me on the chat. And as usual,
I have one question. I'm sorry.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe for the moderators or for the people that are closest to Tyler, maybe we should add a sobriety group to this. I think that would help.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of people that are going through things that might need sobriety help or leadership.
Okay.
And I know I could use it. So maybe there's others that could use it as well.
All right. I will definitely mention that to Tyler. Thank you for bringing that up, Chris.
Sure. Thank you.
All right, everybody. I didn't get, as usual, I talked too much and didn't get to my second story. So hopefully sometime in the future, we'll get back to that Murdaugh story. But this was important. And I think we had some really, really good discussions and talked about some good things. And as far as I know, Keith was in the chat more, but I think we made it through without too much argument in the chat. Even though we were talking about some really tense subjects. And so I send my prayers to Tyler for safe travels and that he is back safely with us tomorrow night.
Everybody's asking about Shanna.
Oh, and
Amen
Shanna.
to that.
And Shanna, apparently Shanna. So Shanna is having a little bit of a rough time. So let's make sure we keep Shanna Pittman and her family. I figured that was going to happen about a week out. The first week you're so busy taking care of arrangements. that, I had Keith and I both had our best friend die when we were in our 20s, and different people, not the same person. And so we kind of, know that we both had to kind of plan the funerals. And that first kind of week, you're just kind of operating on, I guess adrenaline and energy and just getting through it. And then after that, that's when the sadness really seems to hit. So please keep Shanna in your prayers. And again, tomorrow night is Faith Friday. As I've said before, it's life-changing if you have not been a participant in our Faith Friday before. So we encourage you to come back and join us. And with that, I'm going to end the stream.
You have to wear crazy socks.
Oh, you have to wear crazy socks tomorrow night for Jason Laundrie. His father, Pastor Kent Laundrie, said that's what they do to honor Jason. So the Feller fam has agreed that we're all going to wear crazy socks of some kind tomorrow night. So you have to wear crazy socks and be flexible enough to hold your foot up to the camera to show. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, all right. Y'all have a very good night. Love you all. Thank you for being so nice. Thank you for being so supportive. And we'll see you back tomorrow night, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.